Lovely. Okay, well, hello everyone. Welcome to the next in our lecture series. I'm Jamie Fraser, the director here at the Albright. I think everyone in the room knows that, but hello to everyone on Zoom. You are very welcome to join us as part of this lecture series wherever you may be. I'll just draw your attention to the next in our series, which is on October the 15th by Maritz Adam. Maritz, in the middle here. Maritz is our Fraser Fellow, and he's giving his lecture, Flights of the Mind, Dreams, Visions, Journeys, and Authority Construction Between Classical and Jewish Literature. And that is like today at our normal time of 5 o'clock for the lecture, 6 o'clock for the supper. Come to be challenged in thought, but then have a glass of wine. It is a real pleasure today to introduce our speaker, Simon Cy Walsh. Simon has been a long-time associate here at the Albright over the last couple of years. He fell down the rabbit hole of Dead Sea Scrolls research, studying a master's degree at Durham University after classes with Professor Loren Stuckenbruck, and he never escaped. He's now a Cambridge doctoral candidate and, of course, an Albright Associate Fellow, where he's studying the war rules genre, notably in light of its scribal presentation and its Hellenistic influences. When Simon is not wrestling with scrolls, heaven forfend, he can be found doing a range of things, including playing a guitar or else lecturing or working in the jungles of Colombia alongside refugee communities, which he's been doing for over 20 years. Please welcome Cy Walsh.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's a real privilege to be able to be here and to present my PhD work. Thanks to Jamie, and I want to thank Shua as well for making me feel so welcome, and also the community here at the Albright. I'm the one that's buried in the basement writing up my PhD. Like many started a PhD about 10 years ago, life takes over. The PhD got shelved for a time, and I've been back here at the Albright to write that up. It's been great to be part of this community and have so many of you just encourage me to actually get it done. Okay, well, I would like to share with you some of my research. Look at that! You're getting a head start on it. I would like to share some of my research. What we're going to look at today is the scribal presentation of the War Scroll. We will ask, if we understand how the scribe has presented the scroll, get a sense of what its form, what its structure looks like, can we then find in the wider world around Qumran, in the wider cultural world, any other texts with which we can see any parallels that will help us to make sense of it. So I'm looking at the genre of the scroll. Literary genre is the unsaid of texts. It's what sets a horizon of expectation with a text. And ever since the work of Hermann Gunkel, it's been axiomatic in biblical studies, at least, the importance of understanding the genre of a text to be able to interpret it intelligibly. The scroll needs no introduction. The war rule, the war scroll, the war of the sons of light against the sons of darkness. It was found in Cave 1, 1947, ended up with Professor Sukenik from the Hebrew University, who was responsible for unrolling the scroll, transcribing it, and trying to make sense of it initially. With its publication, the gauntlet was thrown down. This unknown literary genre. What is this unknown literary genre? Well, a new student of the scroll today, wishing to understand what this scroll is about, will find that any enthusiasm they have will very, very quickly turn to despair, most likely. They might read, as they look at existing scholarship, from someone like Yadin. It's a guide for the problems of the long predicted war. Turn to another scholar and you'll hear, no, it's a new apocalypse. Another scholar, no, it's a GHQ manual for the guidance of the Brotherhood at Armageddon. No, turn to somebody else, Duhaim. It's a utopian tactical treatise. Or Krieg. No, actually, it's none of those. It's liturgy. It's a cultic drama, which is enacting the community's hopes of eschatology. Okay, so, yeah, what is this scroll about? What is this unknown genre? Well, there's one point which almost all are in agreement. This scroll is about war. What does it say about war? Well, that's a totally different story. Yadin will look at the scroll. When he originally worked, Yadin, Sukanik's son, who worked on it, Yadin, and he saw that the scroll was actually divided, he thought, into three sections. One being a battle series, one being a liturgical series, and another part being this dualistic series. How is it that it was structured? Well, Yadin thought that he could know the mind of the scribal author, and that there were four questions that the scribe was trying to answer, and that he was arranging the contents in the scroll in answer to those four questions. Soon other scholars came along and said, no, this can't be one document. You've got one war that's talking about a war for 40 years, and you've got this other dualistic battle, a 7-day Armageddon. There must be something else going on. Dupont-Sommer said, oh, the end part at the end section of the scroll must be an annex, an add-on. If Dupont-Sommer had raised the flag and Van der Ploeg was the first to lead the charge, he published a list of inconsistencies in the scroll's content. Why is it, he said, that you've got a war for 7 days? Why is it you've got a war for 40 years? Why is it you've got a war against the nations? Why is it that you've got a war from the sons of light against the sons of darkness? It must be a composite document. Trying to read the scroll for its account of war, it just does not make sense. It must be a composite document of two different traditions that have been brought together with different redactional layers. Along comes Davies, who grasps the nettle and attempts to understand the structure of the scroll. And as he's working through it, he again understands there must be two traditions, a dualistic tradition on one hand that describes this apocalyptic war, and a nationalistic campaign based, he thought, on a military manual. But suddenly you're reading the scroll and you get to column 10 and you get all this liturgy. In fact, you don't just get one column of liturgy, you get 4 columns of liturgy. What is this sort of interlude? And he says, right, there must be a form critical challenge for us. How do we explain the presence of so much liturgy, hymns and prayers in the scroll, seemingly whose theme is on war? Today, it's universally accepted the War Scroll is a composite manuscript, a string of different original forms that have been brought together. So our modern student is probably in despair by now, with no agreement about what the genre of the scroll is. Agreement that yes, its theme is war, but no agreement, is that war a 1-stage war, a 2-stage war, a 3-stage war, a dualistic tradition, a nationalistic campaign? And no agreement about the overall form of the scroll. Well, in my research, I found that there is actually reason, rather than to just throw our hands up in the air and, as some have started doing in scholarship, and just give up on the question of genre. Give up trying to understand what the scroll is about and say, no, there is no unified form, there is no unified theme that we're looking for. After 80 years of scholarship, almost 80 years of scholarship on the scroll, there is good reason to question Sukanik's original assumption that its theme is about war. A good hypothesis is one that is verifiable. It is one that is economic in its explanation, and it is one that takes into account all of the evidence. After 80 years, scholars have established no consensus whatsoever on what the theme of of what the war is about. Explanations take up hundreds of pages and are far from economic, and they do not take account of all of the evidence with this huge block, as Davies pointed out, this form critical question of what is all this liturgy doing in the scroll. There's a good reason to question once again, do we need a more nuanced understanding about what the scroll is saying about war? This is jumping ahead. Furthermore, there is a large swath of scroll evidence that has been overlooked in terms of the question of the scroll's form and its genre. And that is the very scribal presentation. Scholars have read the scroll for what it says about war. And because a section suddenly is liturgy, they've said, oh, that must come from another tradition. That is, the scroll has been divided up along thematic fault lines. Now, theme may be a strong indicator of form, but theme is not form. So what I've been looking to do in my research is to look at the very form of the scroll. How is it that the scribe has presented the thematic material? And are there any indications in how the scribe has presented that material that help us to understand it? So what we're going to look at this afternoon, very briefly, is how has the scribe formally presented the thematic content throughout the scroll? Does that help us to get a grasp of its overall shape? And what light might this shed on us understanding its literary genre? Okay, so I invite you to come with me and let's have a look at how the scribe presents the scroll. Here we are. This is the manuscript of 1QM. Absolutely beautiful manuscript. Professor Tove calls it a deluxe manuscript. We see here extra wide margins. Particularly here at the start, we know, because it's extra space, but we have the very start of the manuscript. It's written in the early Herodian script, which would date it paleographically to around 30 BCE. You can tell that particularly from the square type. You can see this final mem here, particularly fine example of that. Sukenik, when he was working on this manuscript, said, look, this is an expert scribe writing with an accurate and beautiful hand. In my research, I've been looking at the formal features that the scribe has used, and I just want to share a small repertoire of those features that help us to understand the scroll. The first of those is section spacing. Now, the significance of section spacing has been debated. It's been debated at the level of all of the scroll findings and generalizations that have been made. Those that have worked specifically on the war rule itself have various opinions. Yadin looked at it and he said, hey, there's only one system of section spacing at play here, a single tier, and he comes up with that if sections begin at the right margin, if the preceding section ends so as to leave the last half, at least half of the line blank, no further spacing is made. He will distinguish between leaving whole lines blank and sometimes, depending on where the previous line ends, if it's far enough back, he doesn't leave the line blank. That's to say there's no significance of meaning of hierarchy between a shorter line spacing and a longer line spacing. Schultz and Malachi Martin, when they looked at it, they saw a two-tier sense of section spacing, saying we're having major sections being divided here and we're having subsections being divided. Others have said there's absolutely no significance whatsoever to these line spacing. This composite manuscript is built up from all these redactional layers. How can we ever presume that the line spacing is preserved in any sense of meaning in the text? Well, let's have a look at line spacing just for you to get a feel for it yourselves. we have here, the scribe has written this section, and you see, has left the end of the line blank. Here, we find this little space. Now, I point this out only not to confuse it with a closed spacing that you'll find in the Masoretic system. The reason the space is left is because you can't write over the parchment. What's actually going on here is it's a continuation of the same sentence. Here again, we can see that the end of the line has been left blank. You need to use your imagination. There's a lot of deterioration to the scroll. We're probably missing 5 or 6 lines here at the bottom. Now, I know I'm among archaeologists who are highly skilled at imagining what's not there. I mean, what was once there. So please put those skills to use, and you can imagine how this is, beautifully written when it was first made. Okay, let's fly through these. So we'll just fly through here. You can see here, comes to the end of the line, and the scribe leaves the next line blank. Here again, the scribe comes to the end of the line, has left this whole line blank. Here we have just coming to the end of the line, and just the end of the line is left blank. Here again, we come to the end of the line, and the line has been left blank. Once more. Here it's a little harder. We can't work out whether it's a whole line that has been left blank. We can tell it looks like a line has been left blank because there's no text here. Once again, the end of the line has been left blank by the scribe. Here, a whole line has been left blank by the scribe. Once again, I mean, isn't that a beautifully set out manuscript? Very, very few corrections. Here again, it's difficult to tell. Is this a full line that has been left blank, or is it just the end of the line that has been left blank? The end of the line, you're getting the idea. I mean, my question is here, there was this space left. This is the one sentence that keeps going, and it looks like perhaps the scribe drew the line to show that it wasn't a closed section spacing. The end of the line has been left blank. The end of the line has been left blank, and again, the whole line has been left blank afterwards. At the end of the line, again, it's difficult to tell. Is that the whole line has been left blank or just the end? The end of the line, a space where there's deterioration, or it was difficult for the scribe to write over, and so has left that space there. The end of the line has been left blank. The end of the line, the whole line, once more, another whole line, at the end of the line. Right, the kids will keep going through. So what is your impression? When you look at this manuscript alongside other scrolls from Qumran, the leaving of a full line is striking. We have 9 full lines that have been left blank. The only other scrolls, I mean, you'll find other scrolls, I think like 1QS, which is the community rule, I think it has 3 lines left blank, if I can remember. But the only other scrolls where you'll find a significant number of lines left blank is the Psalm scroll. Psalm 119, the acrostic will leave a whole line sort of blank, marking off each section. So one feature is, as I say, the section divisions. Another feature we find are serif headings that again are unique. I mean, serif, we don't find the word in the Hebrew Bible, but the serif headings themselves are unique to just a few of the scrolls. And we find the greatest number of headings in this scroll. So, come in here, Leshanot, what does this say? Seder Digle Hamil Hama. Rule for changing the order of battle divisions. Okay, so we'll see more of these. So one feature, the section spacing, another feature, the headings. Another feature of this formal repertoire are rules. There is a self-awareness throughout the scroll that the scribe or scribes are presenting rules. So I read three of these. Then the priests shall blow on the 6 trumpets of the slain a sharp staccato note to direct the battle. And the Levites and all the peoples with ram's horns shall blow a great battle alarm together in order to melt the heart of the enemy. With the sound of the alarm, the battle darts shall fly out to bring down the slain. Then the sound of the ram's horns shall quiet, but on the trumpets, the priest shall continue to blow a sharp staccato note to direct the signals of battle until they have hurled into the battle line of the enemy 7 times. Afterwards, the priest shall blow for them the trumpets of retreat, a low note, level, and legato. This passage has been interpreted in all sorts of different directions. How is it that the scribe understands what's going on here? Well, we find this word, serek, again. According to this rule, the priest shall blow for the 3 divisions. So a procedure has been given, 1, 2, 3 of these rules, and the scribe says, according to this rule, that's what has been presented, the priest should blow for these divisions. There's a clue how to understand and to interpret that. Another formal feature of the repertoire, classified listings. Again, absolutely striking. You know, these section spacing. We don't find this section spacing like that in the other scrolls, with the exception I was saying of something like the Psalm scroll. The serek headings indicating sections. The conception, the idea, the consciousness, the awareness that the scribe is writing rules. How is the content then presented? Well, what we find throughout the scroll, time and time again, are classified listings. Let's take the very first lines of the scroll. The first offensive by the sons of light shall begin against the lot of the sons of darkness, the army of Belial, the troops of Edom, Moab, the sons of Ammon, the armies of Philistia, the troops of the Kittim of Assyria, and those with them in support who violate the covenant. What is being listed here? Is the scribe describing, is this a description of the first offensive? Is that what is being listed? What is being listed? Different divisions of the enemy. Yeah. So this first offensive is going to begin against who? Yeah, against the sons of darkness, that is the army of Belial, that is the troops of Edom, that is Moab, the sons of Ammon, the armies of Philistia, the troops of Kittim of Assyria, and all those who help and support the violators of the covenant. The advantage of using lists is that it's very easy to ask, what is being presented here? What is being listed? What is categorized? How are we to read it? That first column carries on into the second as a section. A war of divisions shall take place during the 29 remaining years. In the first year, they shall fight against Aram Naharaim. In the second, against the sons of Lut. In the third, they shall fight against the rest of the sons of Aram, Urshul, Torah, and Mesha, who are beyond the Euphrates. In the fourth and fifth, they shall fight against the sons of Arpachshad. In the sixth and seventh, they shall fight against the sons of Assyria and Persia and the easterners up to the great desert. What is being listed here? The simple sort of diagnostic, what is it that's being classified here by the scribe? The different enemy divisions of this war. Would you agree? That's what the scribe is listing. Yeah, we get something of the intentionality of the scribe through that. How is it we're trying to read it? So we've had the basic divisions of the sons of darkness, and here we've had a war of divisions, it's called, and the basic divisions of the enemy nations. So what I found in my research as you go through the scroll, and I made a very close reading of the scroll, is a systematic use of section spacing, of headings and directive cues, of the text being presented as rules using classified listings. And if we pay attention to those scribal forms, the scribal presentation, the scroll starts to take on a very different light. Would you like to have a look? So here is one of the sections that I'm calling on trumpets. My reason for choosing on trumpets will become very clear in a second. We have here, unfortunately, damaged parchment. One of the reasons the form isn't so obvious, is we're always wrestling and having to reconstruct, is the rule of the trumpets of muster and the trumpets of alarm according to all their duties. So that is here. The scribe has left a full line blank. Before here, this text here was a text we were just looking at, listing all those divisions. In the 7th year, they shall fight against whoever. We had this line blank, and now we're talking about, and introduced by a heading, trumpets, just to get a sense of what's happening. And then follows what remains of a list. The trumpets of their assembly when the gates of war open for the skirmishers to advance. The trumpets for the fanfare of the slain. The trumpets for the ambush. The trumpets for the pursuit when the enemy has been routed. The trumpets for the reassembly when withdrawing from battle. What is a scribe classifying here? Different trumpets, trumpet types, according to what? Lechol avodatam, according to their duties. The scribe has actually told us. Yeah. So if there's any doubt of what this section is about, well, we've had a section break and we've had a title, and it says the rule of the trumpets of muster and the trumpets of alarm according to their duties. The trumpets for their assembly, that's the duty of the trumpet, that's what it's going to signal when the gates of war open. The trumpets for the fanfare of the slain, the trumpets for the ambush. The list continues. There's a second list then starts. On the trumpets for summoning the congregation, they shall write, call of God. On the trumpets for summoning the commanders, they shall write, God's princes. On the trumpets for the formations, they shall write, array of God. What is it that the scribe is classifying? Sorry if it feels like I'm teaching you to suck eggs, but there's been so much confusion in scholarship about what it all says. Well, the scribe, having defined the different types of trumpet by their duties, according to their duties, is now listing trumpet inscriptions according to the duties of the trumpets. If the trumpet's used for this, this is the inscription for it. It's instructions, rules, been sectioned off with a little heading, a rule, and it's been presented as a list. On banners. So the trumpets ended here. And what has our scribe done? Well, the scribes thought, I'm going to leave a whole line blank. Is there a reason? Well, we find another heading. Serek otot kol ha'edah. The rule of the banners of the whole congregation according to their mesorotam, their groupings, their ties, their bands. What would we expect to find? If what I'm saying is true, then there should be a certain predictability about this. What would we expect to find now? A section on banners of the whole congregation according to their different groupings is how they should be classified. On the grand banner, which is the head of all nations, they shall write, people of God, the names Israel and Aaron, and the names of the 12 tribes of Israel according to their order of birth. On the banners of the heads of the camps of the 3 tribes, they shall write, the Spirit of God and the names of the 3 tribes. On the banner of the tribe, they shall write. We have this repetitive sort of syntax as the scribe is what? Listing the different banners which are defined how? Of all the nations, of the heads of the camps of the 3 tribes, the banner of the tribe. Unfortunately, we get a little unstuck because we run into the deterioration of the text. But it carries on. On the banner of Merari, they shall write the offering of God. On the banner of the thousands, they shall write the anger of God is loosed against Belial. On the banner of the 100, of the 50, of the 10. How has the scribe presented the thematic content? As a list? What is it that the scribe is classifying here? Well, the different banners according to their groupings and alongside the different inscriptions, the different banner inscriptions to go. There can be no doubt about what that text is about, I suggest. The scribe has told us. But now we come here, and the scribe has only left the end of the line blank. What's the significance? You know, Yadin says it makes no difference. It could be anything that follows. Well, let's have a look. When they go to battle, they shall write on their banners. Oh, so what are they still talking about? They're still talking about banners. The truth of God, the righteousness of God, the glory of God, the justice of God. When they draw near to battle, they shall write on their banners the right hand of God, the appointed time of God. When they return from battle, they shall write. Do you get a sense of lists? These classified listings that I was talking about. Again, the scribe is talking about banners, but classifying a different facet of them. This time, it's what inscriptions are to be written on the banners when the particular divisions, and this is talking of the priests and Levites, it's hard to tell because of the erosion in the manuscript in this particular example, but the particular inscriptions for different stages that should be written. Look what happens next. The scribe, again, leaves the end of the line blank, and we find here a cheeky little Serek title, one of these little headings again. Serek otut ha-edar. So just to be clear, the rule of the banners of the congregation, flagging that the list that follows, or I shouldn't give it away, what now follows, it refers again back to the congregation. The rule of the banners of the congregation. When they set out to battle, they shall write on the first banner, the congregation of God. On the there are more divisions that had been defined for the whole congregation than was then defined for the Levites and priests. When they set out to battle, they shall write on the first banner, the congregation of God. On the second banner, the camps of God. On the third, tribes of God. And they shall write a list of their names. When they draw near for battle, they shall write on their banners. When they return from battle, they shall write on their banners. What is it that the scribe is classifying? So the scribe has indicated a subsection, let's call it, or has left just the end of the line blank. The theme is still, the topic is still the banners, but it's a different aspect because it's now the banners of the congregation. Or was that just coincidence? I mean, here again, the scribe leaves the end of the line blank. And what is it that's listed? It's not a full spacing, but just the end of the line. And we see the top of still the banners of the whole congregation shall be from 14 cubits long, the banners of the 3 tribes, the banner of a tribe, 12 cubits, the banner of 10,000, the banner of 1,000. So at the very beginning of the section, the scribe had left the whole line blank, had given a heading saying this is a rule for the banners of the whole congregation. The scribe then defined all those banners according to what? As he said, Meserotam, according to their groupings. Having defined those groupings, the scribe then presents different subsections where he classifies inscriptions for when the priests are going to war, inscriptions for when the congregation go to war, and now the different lengths of all those banners, all the time according to their groupings. This crazy text, which apparently is a composite document and has no rhyme or reason to it, actually what the scribe is presenting is highly systematic. Do you see that? I mean, it's quite fascinating, really, isn't it, to see? What rhyme or reason is there to the scribe's presentation of the banners and to the scroll? Throughout the scroll, and this has been the result of my research, the scribe presents rules, iteratively reworking military, apocalyptic, and liturgical material. Already, we've seen some liturgical material in the banner inscriptions, in the war of the sons of darkness and their enemies, the team of Assyria, some apocalyptic language. And yeah, we'll get on to some more military. We had military when it was the priests sounding on the trumpets for the divisions to advance against the enemy. So we've had very different sources, but these have all been reworked using a stable formal repertoire of striking features, really, in that they appear predominantly in the war. Those are vocats, headings, prescriptions, and classified listings. So my question is, well, let's look again at the whole of the scroll as scholarship has read it, when it's reading it for what the scroll says about war. Well, we have this introduction that, okay, maybe it's a one stage, maybe it's a two stage, maybe it's a three stage war. We're not sure. Depends which scholar you ask. That's then followed, and this is giving your Dean's categories, a battle Surrect series or a nationalistic campaign. One particular war tradition is how it's regularly understood. But it's very rudely interrupted by suddenly all these hymns, this liturgy, these prayers. What does liturgy have to do with war? Until we get to column 15 here, where we get the beginning of another series, a dualistic war series. What happens if we read the scroll, not for war, but asking each time, how is it that the scribe has presented its content? Trying to pay close attention to these headings, to the section divisions, to the listings, asking each time, what is it that the scribe has classified? What is this about, really? We get a very, very different structure that begins on the lots of war. That's to say, on the different divisions of the war. What is it that the scribe is listing all throughout? It's not a narrative account of war. It's a listing of different divisions, divisions of the sons of light and the sons of darkness, divisions within the restored temple cult, how Israel is to recruit divisions for the war of divisions, divisions of the enemy nations that are to be targeted throughout that campaign. On knots, on trumpets, on banners, on battalions, on light infantry, on cavalry, on camps, on signaling military evolutions, on liturgy spoken in battle, on conducting battle against the Katim. One question this throws up immediately is, what is this about? About war. In fact, none of those subjects themselves are directly speaking about war. We're talking about the divisions for the war. We're talking about the trumpets to be used in war. We're talking about the banners to be used in war. We'll see some of these, but light infantry, we're talking about how the light infantry are to be organized, what their weapons are and specific characteristics of them, the camps, who goes out to war, certain purity requirements for them, but the subject, what is being classified, what is being listed by the scribe, are requirements for the camps. On signaling military evolutions, we had a sense of that in that rule I said, where it refers as a rule, where it was the priest should blow a low and staccato note to signal that the troops sort of move forward. What was it that was being listed there? It was the actual trumpet signals that are to be sounded, and so forth. It's a very, very different shape to the scroll that challenges this original assumption, a Sukenik, that has stood for 80 years, that the theme of the scroll is, in first instance, the war of the sons of light against the sons of darkness. Instead, we have a curious topical syllabus. I'm just watching the time here. If you have 10 more minutes, come with me and I can help us make sense of what this curious topical syllabus might be, if you would like to carry on this journey. Yep, we're all still there. Gattung, what a wonderful word. There's a really helpful distinction made in some German, particularly sort of biblical criticism, when talking about genre, between literary form and the Gattung, the genre of a text. We have, I suggest, if we read the scroll through the eyes of how the scribe has presented the content, a form that has come more clearly into view of these topical sections. The question that follows is, well, this form, is it a form that's unique in its own right, or is there a wider literary family to which this literary form belongs, the Gattung? Let's have a look from literary form to genre. Now, two scholars quite uniquely found, a lot of scholars have found a military influence on the scroll. And two in particular, Atkinson and Duhigg, noted the influence of the Greco-Roman tactical treatises, but only within a specific section of the scroll, from columns 2 to column 9. Column 1 is this introduction, supposedly, and then we have liturgy, which shouldn't be, you know, it's hard to explain what it's doing in the scroll anyway. So between columns 2 and 9, they noted an affinity between the war rule and the Greco-Roman tactical treatises. Now, the tactical treatises are technical manuscripts. Technical manuscripts are a Hellenistic genre, widely dispersed in the Hellenistic world, that have a very particular form about them. Let me just highlight, because of the shortness of time, these 2 points. The main body of their content is set out as a systematic presentation. It's techne, which is the art of knowledge. It's a practical knowledge. We get the word technological from it, or technical rather. And a very specific presentation that's based on diaresis, which are divisions. There's a hierarchical structure which will take a subject matter and will begin by dividing it into its logical parts as parts of a whole, defining the main categories and then describing them, and then going on to take those parts and, if necessary, dividing them again into further subdivisions and describing them. Also, we have the role of topoi, of topics, that takes on a very, very specific meaning in the technical manuscripts, where any subject, and it's a practical subject, it could be on medicine, it could be on architecture, it could be on agriculture. We'll find many, many different of these manuals will have a canon of topics that are to be discussed when discussing this subject. With that in mind, let's have a look at the tactical treatises. Now, we have 3 excellent tactical treatises, but the question I want to ask very briefly is, what topoi constitute the syllabus? What topics make up the syllabus of the tactical treatises? And I'm not wanting to skew anything. These are the headings that one finds within Asclepius Odotus, who's writing 100 BCE. This is how the tactical work, the art of tactics, is divided up. Branches of the army is the first topic. Subdivisions of the hoplite phalanx, organization of the entire army and its subdivisions, intervals between the soldiers, size and character of arms, the light infantry, the cavalry, chariots, elephants, terms for military evolutions, various arrangements of the divisions of the army on the march, and commands used in military evolutions. we find it's a traditional arrangement of topics that is preserved across all three examples that we have. At their core, share that same topical syllabus from 100 BCE through to 100 CE. That's to say, in existence at the same time as the scroll was written, whatever dating you want to choose to give. Now, Duhem finds this affinity between columns 2 and 9. They both begin with a discussion of the structure of the army. They set rules for the heavy infantry, the light infantry, the targeteers, and the cavalry before describing different maneuvers of these troops. So I have a little game for you called Spot the Topos. Okay, we're going to see, as we compare the Greco-Roman tactical treatise with the war rule. These are the topics that Duhem has found. Just because of limitation of time, I have put them down. But basically is where he has found them. I will illustrate some of that very, very quickly. For example, Asclepiodotus sets out topics on the soldiers' intervals, character of arms, light infantry, and the cavalry. This is part of the sequence. Asclepiodotus describes the character of the arms of the heavy infantry, recommending the best shield for use is bronze. At the same point, the war rule recommends for the heavy infantry that all of them shall bear shields of bronze. In the Tactica, a new topic then follows on the battle formations of the light infantry, prescribing that the light infantry targeteers shall be stationed by the general. In the war rule, a new topic also follows. 3 divisions of light infantry shall advance and take the station between the battle lines. So, I mean, these are very, we can go into a lot more depth to do this. Obviously, it's not the time to be able to do that here. Asclepiodotus' subsequent topic then turns to the cavalry and their battle formations. Now, the cavalry, like the light infantry, take their positions according to the demands of the battle. The war rule follows suit with a topic on the cavalry, and 7 cavalry formations shall take up the position on the right and the left. Okay, so we have here a very, very close affinity, sharing the same topical order in the war scroll as we find in 3 extant Greco-Roman treatises. What differences do we find? Just to qualify, the reasons why that's in the middle of intervals between soldiers and size and character and arms, that section in the scroll will cover both those topics. It talks about the formation of the soldiers and then goes on to talk about the size and character of their arms. It's not just fudging it. But what differences do we see? Well, we have no chariots or elephants in the scroll. Is that an issue? Well, Asclepiodotus says, although we rarely find any use for chariots and elephants, we shall nevertheless set forth their nomenclature to complete this discussion. It appears that they weren't that important to Asclepiodotus and not at Qumran either, who put a section on the camps in their place. What else is missing? Well, if we look at the very beginning, unfortunately, Duhem and in his work only looked at columns 2 to 9, basing it on Udin's structure of the scroll. What should we expect to be at the very beginning of a Techne manuscript? It's a systematic presentation that will start with the major categories first. That's how diaresis works. It's the Aristotelian logic. Well, on lots, the basic divisions of the war. The first offensive by the Sons of Light should begin against the Sons of Darkness, Belial's army, defining who they all are. When the temple cult is restored, this is who they all are. There will be a war of divisions against all. It's a dynamic equivalence. I realize time is running on, so let me very, very quickly get to the end. What else is missing? Well, we have one last topic. Commands in military evolutions. scholars have found, as did Duhigg, Davies as well, that the War Scroll, chapter 9, chapter 9, terms for military evolutions. That was the section that we looked at again with the priest blowing on the trumpets, playing different notes. It's instead of it being terms for military evolutions, what we've got in the war rule are the trumpet signals used for military evolutions. That's what the scribe is listing. So I'm not trying to fudge it here. If you ask, what is the scribe classifying in this list? The scribe is classifying by the military evolutions, which is the through line, trumpet signals for evolutions. I suggest it's not open for interpretation in that sense. But that's where it stops. Now we get this rude interlude of liturgy. What has liturgy to do? How do we explain what this liturgy even has to do with the scroll? Well, in terms of the Greco-Roman tactical treatise, to stop here would be to stop before getting to the end of the alphabet without a tap. I mean, you know, such being the number and character of the evolutions, this is talking about here, there would naturally follow a discussion of the commands used in these movements by which we can order and move the troops and return them to their original stations. For this is the one thing we have left to do. This would be an incomplete discussion, a topical syllabus shared traditionally, we've seen over 200 years, to cut off the discussion here. What do we find next in the scroll? We find the liturgy that is to be spoken in battle. For the very first time in the scroll, we find speech. We find text that's to be speech. We find the text written in the second person. You, for the very first time. It's the same actually in the Greco-Roman tactical treatise. There's a list of commands that are to be spoken. You, and the imperative form. So there we have, I suggest, not only by looking at the scroll through how the scribe presents it, does it challenge our thinking that this is, you know, directly about war. It's a more nuanced understanding than that. What is this topical syllabus? Well, it's the same syllabus that we find in the Greco-Roman tactical treatises. It's a tactical topical syllabus that the scribe has presented in the scroll. And of course, if you try and read it for what it says about war, you'll get yourself into 80 years worth of discussions and difficulties doing that. But if we give priority to the scribe and how the scribe has presented it, and at each instance we're asking, what is it that the scribe has sectioned off here, has introduced here with a heading, has set out as a rule, has classified in a list, then it comes into sharp focus, this topical syllabus. Very lastly, the very last slide, what is the significance of finding the Greco-Roman form at Qumran? Now, Eschler had understood that literature had a bifurcated view of either something was written in Hebrew forms, or if it was diaspora, say philo, where you could have Greek forms written in Greek, but with Jewish ideas. But here, it seems that we have very Jewish ideas and hopes and aspirations written in Hellenistic forms, which muddies that picture. Martin Hengel, you know, would say, how do you mix oil and water? We could frame it as, what do the sons of light have to do with the sons of darkness? What does it mean that they've taken here at Qumran the military art of the nations and have taken that art and have turned it back against them. But this Hellenistic form has given legs to their apocalyptic aspirations. Time's run out, so I could go on for hours, but I will just end with saying, you know, what we see in the war from the evidence of what I've been researching, where it's pointing me is to say we have a priestly tactica. It's dynamic equivalence, but it's the role is of the priest, or purity concerns, that runs like a scarlet thread throughout all of these topics. But the syllabus is the Greco-Roman tactical treatise. The form is the techne form that is being used over at Qumran. It's on the tactics, but whereas the Greco-Roman tactical treatise had a commander in mind and the war rule has a priestly community in mind, the Greco-Roman treatise didn't have a particular war in mind. It was a general discussion on the art of tactics. There is a very, very specific setting for these tactics behind the war scroll, which is that of apocalyptic war. I don't have time to speak about that. If you're interested, you could ask some questions about that. But so we have a priestly tactica on the tactics of apocalyptic war. If we, as I say, listen to what the scribe trying to understand, wrestle with what the scribe is presenting, that brings this form into view. We look at that form within the wider cultural setting, and looking outside to the Hellenistic culture, the wider Hellenistic culture, we find it resonates deeply, following the same topical syllabus as marked up by the scribe as the Greco-Roman technical syllabus. Thank you very, very much.